Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Black and Gold Hockey Podcast, a weekly discussion about the National Hockey League Boston Bruins from hosts and hockey writers Mark Allred and Dominic Tiano. Please subscribe on audio platforms such as Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and kindly consider giving us a 5-star rating along with a written review. For the video version of this weekly podcast, please subscribe on our official YouTube channel by searching Black and Gold Productions LLC, and please click like and the notification bell to be alerted when we drop new Boston Bruins related content. If you'd like to get involved in the Bruins hockey talk, please send us a brief voicemail at 978-504-2727 or send us a question on Twitter using the hashtag AskBNG. Thanks for the continued support and enjoy the show.
All right, what's up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Black and Gold Hockey Podcast, sponsored by the BB Lux Transportation Company. If you need a private car service to and from the greater Boston area, please call BB Lux at 978-701-1473 to schedule your next trip today. This is Season 8, Episode 355, and I'm your host, Mark Allred, and that is my co-host, Dom Tiano. Dom, how you doing, and how you been the last 2 weeks, bud?
Doing great. No complaints. A lot of hockey to watch.
It's always good. Always good to have the hockey on. We're not going to have it much longer, man. So we got to soak up as much as possible.
There's always hockey. Just ask this guy up here.
Absolutely. And joining us once again is friend of the show, returning guest, Parker McLean. Parker is the host of the On the Fly YouTube channel, and please give Parker a follow on Twitter at On the Fly 1515. That's at On the Fly 1515. And please subscribe to his YouTube channel by clicking the link in the show notes I'll have later when we release this episode. But this is episode 355. It's a live stream. I think we're gonna start doing this more often because we've been hearing a lot of interaction saying we love the live streams and so on, but I'm still gonna be putting it out on audio platforms and the YouTube channel and everything. So but sorry for babbling. Parker, thank you very much for joining me. How you doing?
Doing good. Been busy, but always a good day when you're busy, right?
4-hour exam today, big guy. What's up with that crap?
Oh, you know how it goes. nothing that keeps you from a little bit of hockey.
That's right. I don't know how it goes. I never got past grade 3. So seriously, people, this guy's hockey coverage and what he does is top notch. If you're not following him, follow him. His coverage the last few days of the Women's World Championship, the best I've seen out there. So give this guy a follow. Awesome work, Parker.
Thanks, Dom.
Yeah, and the other guy that I got connected to from your coverage, he was doing a great job as well. I've been like retweeting and reading all you guys' stuff. So yeah, great stuff. And just another a way of getting women's hockey out there. You know, it's growing and it's great. And hopefully, people grasp onto it and the NHL does too, to really support that, because it does deserve to be fully funded in a way like the men's game. So I do want to remind folks that if you do want to interact with our program, you can always send us a voicemail at our listener hotline at 978-504-2727. And always on the X, on the Twitter, please use the hashtag AskBNG if you want to send us a question ahead of time. We're always interested in interacting with folks and, feeling the fan base out there. And obviously, we're always looking for more content creators, either start a new hockey sports-related podcast or on our Cyclone Sports Podcast Network, or join the team as a website writer and credential media opportunities. Send me an email at blackandgoldproductionsllc@gmail.com. But so let's get started, huh? So it's been a while since we've been on the pod waves, about 2 weeks. So let's start with our thoughts on this Boston Bruins team in the last 7 games. Where they went 5-2. They have 3 games remaining in the 2023-24 regular season. Thoughts on what we have left and what can we expect for the upcoming postseason?
Parker, you go first, buddy.
Sure. So, I mean, when we look at it, right, we got a team here that's looking like they're going to make a decent run this year. When we look at it, I mean, they're 4 lines strong. I wouldn't say there's any one particular line I'm looking at to really sort of provide that offense compared to previous years, where we had that top line. But at the same time, you got a 4 line team, a pretty solid defensive core, and 2 goaltenders that seem to be running hot, especially as of late. So we'll see if they can keep it going here. And then I think in general, we look at where they are in the standings. There's still the potential for them to come first in that Eastern Conference, take the wild card 2 seed. But there's really no team here that has that sort of standalone sort of roster that's really going to set them apart in the playoffs. I don't believe. I think any team that you're going to play is going to be top notch, and definitely sort of going to be a tough matchup heading into the playoffs here.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because warning to everybody is be careful what you wish for. Like I remember last year, everybody wanted to face Florida because they were the 8th seed, and to me, that was the team that scared me the most. So, what I wanted to see over the last couple of weeks is the team trending in the right direction, playing the right way. They've been playing in some what we'll call playoff caliber games, and then they throw up the stinker against Carolina. I always said they were going to go 5-1-0 in their last 6, and that was the one they were going to lose. So, uh, they're heading the right way. Let's hope they get back on track tomorrow against Pittsburgh and play the way that they need to play.
Yeah, no, just sort of touch on that as well. When we look at their next 2 games, they got Pittsburgh and Washington. Both those teams are fighting for that last spot in the playoffs, so it's do or die for them as well. So,
Yep.
if you're Boston, you gotta come to play, and if you're gonna throw up a stinker, Pittsburgh and Washington would love that. They're looking for any opportunity that they can to get into the playoffs, any easy points. At the end of the day, if you're Boston, you got to come to play, or else you're going to get absolutely smoked in those games.
Yeah, look what the Islanders and the Flyers did to the Rangers. 2 teams desperate for wins, and they took down the best team in the East.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I'm more concerned about is how this Boston Bruins team is going to bring the physicality, and I'm not talking the glove drop opportunities and somebody beating ass, but what it takes to sustain a good playoff and a playoff run for that matter. Obviously, we have Pat Maroon, and we'll talk about him later on, but I kind of see Jim Montgomery calling this team out recently, trying to, they're still searching for their identity. I've heard that a lot from him this year. And, towards the end of the year, towards the end of the season, I was kind of like thinking to myself, I'm like, really, they're doing what they can with what they have, and that's impressive. It has been an impressive year. Not as impressive as last year, but when you take 2 cornerstone pieces like Bergeron and Krejci out, and obviously we had our doubts on this year. Well, I did anyway. I was just, we're probably going to hold water, but the whole thing, this whole season has been kind of a whirlwind on my prediction, and a very bad one at that. But I just want to see this team get more and more physical, and be more engaged, and finish the checks, and play that playoff hockey. And I think that the scoring will come along with it. But and another thing is the special teams. Power play is definitely going to be better. Penalties got to be penalty kill has to be better. But I'm excited. Regardless, I'm excited, and hopefully they get out of the first round. That's pretty much all I can say about that.
I think we've seen an increase in the physicality, though, Mark, since the Florida game.
Oh yeah,
I think Andrew Peak is great in that department. We've said all along that Milan Lucic would allow this team to play bigger than they are, and harder than they really are. Obviously, they didn't have Lucic all season, but in comes Maroon. And trust me, Maroon is going to make them play bigger than they are. I think we'll see a continued rise in the physicality from this team from top to bottom. Whether you're David Pasternak or you're Brandon Carlo, I think we're going to see a continued rise in the physicality.
Real quick, I just want to remind folks that I forgot. I wish I mentioned this when we started, but 6:15 tonight is when we're going to start taking questions from our viewers. So please hold all your really important questions until then. We just want to go through a couple Bruins related topics, and then we'll get right to you guys. And thank you very much for tuning in. By the way, the support has been amazing, and so on. We see Angie, we see Andre, and everybody out there. So I appreciate the patience.
Parker, your thoughts on the physicality?
I mean, when you look at it, I wouldn't say they're a small team, but when you look at some of the other teams, right, they don't necessarily match up in terms of size, but where they are sort of in that is in their spirit, is in their ability to just throw the body, right? At the end of the day, if you play physical, it doesn't matter how big you are because you're going to eventually draw players in. There's no better example of that for me, at least for Brad Marchand, who, despite being a wagering, 5'7", he plays like he's massive. And does he hit people very hard? Probably not, but he's able to get under people's skins. And I think when we look at it in that sense, that's where the Bruins sort of have to play in that sort of realm. Because when we look at it, I mean, they went out and got Peak at the deadline. They got Maroon. Both those players are going to be playing physical hockey. And they wanted to try and get people to bolster up their lineup to be able to play against some of the more skilled teams. You look at a potential first round matchup with the Leafs. Whenever the Leafs play and they're able to play free, they're going to put the puck in the back of the net. But if you can get them into those, corners where you're sort of pushing them around, that's where, Boston's able, and all these years have been able to sort of beat the Leafs in that respect. At the end of the day, but what Boston has to do is they have to play in some physical sense. I think the additions of both Peak and Maroon will definitely help that along. So while I'm looking at Derek Forbort, he was in a non-contact jersey today. If they're able to get him back, I think, Boston is just going to take that next step in terms of size, really be able to push teams around, and it might be at least a little bit more physical and just with that whole mentality of it.
Interesting. Because man, I'm really liking that third pairing of Witherspoon and Peak. And it's also impressed a coach like Jim Montgomery. So I hate to see that broken up, but that's a guy that's like playoff style freaking hockey right there for me.
Yeah, but you say the PK is one area that needs to improve, and Derek Forbort does that. So
that's true.
Like you've got to weigh all your options and what the team needs, and a healthy Derek Forbort for me is in over a healthy Parker Wotherspoon.
And another guy I'll look at too there is also with Matt Grzelcyk, right? Where he in the playoffs has been notoriously healthy scratched because of his more or less inability to play physical. You throw a guy like Derek Forbort on that line with Carlo, and there all of a sudden you have that sort of massive pairing that you're looking for. Could make for an interesting physical line, especially when you put up against, say in that first round, they have to play Matthews, Marner, and Tavares, or Nylander, whoever they put on that ultra first line that they've been liking to do recently. It might make for an interesting game when you're going to be pushing around their star players all night.
Yeah, that's interesting. And we got to get to this one because now we're talking about who the Bruins could possibly play. But if the Stanley Cup playoffs started today, when the Bruins face the Tampa Bay Lightning, or
if the standings finish the way they are today, yes. But there's nothing written in stone. Absolutely nothing. They could face Toronto. They could face the Islanders. They could face Pittsburgh. They could face Washington, Detroit, Philadelphia. All of them are. The only thing we know for sure is they can't face the Rangers or Carolina in round one. That's the only thing that's certain.
And Florida too.
Right.
No, mathematically, Toronto can still catch Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's
So
right.
it's pretty much like the Wild Wild West out in the Eastern Conference right now, trying to.
And I've
get
never
that.
seen it this tight, this late in the season. Never. With
Yeah.
so many, usually you can narrow it down to 2, maybe 3 teams,
Yeah.
but not this year.
I was hoping that we could do like a playoff preview, but it's coming down to,
Well, I'll tell you this. Tomorrow afternoon, the Islanders face the Rangers. Okay. If the Islanders win that in regulation, okay, uh, the Rangers will have 1 game left. The Bruins will have 3. Okay. If the Bruins win outright, it doesn't matter what happens between the Rangers and Ottawa in their game. The Bruins will take first place and will meet. Now, if the Islanders do beat them, the Islanders will have clinched third, so there's no way the Bruins could face them. So it would either be Pittsburgh, Washington, Detroit, or Philadelphia.
Wow. And like Andrew said earlier, how crazy it is for the first round opponent is completely uncertain. Sorry, I can't spit my words out today.
Now, I don't like the idea of facing Tampa just because Vasilevsky, to me, is still the best goaltender in the world. Put him in the playoffs. What was it? 60% of NHL players said in a 1-game winner-take-all game, Vasilevsky's their goalie.
Yeah.
And I think the number 2 came in at 6%.
Yeah, he's crazy good.
And especially in the playoffs, right? Where more or less 1 game can be the turning point in a series.
Yep.
You don't want to have you're staring down the other ice, one of the best goalies we've seen in quite a while, right? And just in the playoffs, stakes are at an all-time high. Teams are playing defensive hockey, and you're trying to go up against a really solid goaltender in net. We've seen it in not just the NHL, but in any tournament or any IIHF event you go to in the Olympics. One hot goaltender can win you not just a series, but sometimes even the entire thing, right? So at the end of the day, you got to be careful about what you wish for. Sort of to Dom's point off the top, you can't pick a team that you want to go up against because they're going to turn out like Florida and they're going to beat you.
And it's funny you say that, Parker, because like I've been following the J20 in Sweden for a couple of years now because there's been Bruins prospects playing there. And it's funny because you take Kostadinsky's team and Nason's team, or they played on the same team, finished, I think, 9th out of 10 teams, but they were all in the playoffs. But the top teams got to pick their opponent. And the first 2 teams that picked them to go up against were knocked out. They knocked them out. So, the game is still played on the ice. It's not on paper. So picking an opponent doesn't always work out for you.
Yeah.
There's 2 teams that worry me, and it's Tampa Bay and Toronto. Now, Toronto, I think is winnable because they don't have the goaltending. But
lately they have.
Right. No, I get that. But, and we've talked about this several times on this program, Dom, Toronto is going to get their chance to beat Boston sooner or later. And I don't ever want it to happen, but karma works in freaking weird ways. You know what I'm saying? And obviously Tampa Bay, with how, they can be, they've had a pretty tough season, being in a wild card position and so on, and just getting to the playoffs. But they could be that Jekyll Hyde type of team and just turn it on. I mean, they have the committee to do it with Kucherov and Brandon Point and, Hedman and Vasilevsky. We just talked about the goaltending that is just a huge factor for a team like that. So those are the 2 teams that worry me the most. I was hoping we would see somebody else make it a little easier while everybody else kind of fights its way out. But why not go the belly at the beast first and see what you got? Angie's telling me to shut my mouth.
The Islanders scare me. Tampa first, and then the Islanders. They would scare me in a first round matchup. Parker, you got two?
I mean, Toronto for me is just a personal scare because every year I got to deal with whatever the result is. Either people are angry at me because Boston won, or the other thing, which I've never actually seen happen. So it really doesn't matter anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
But the other team, I mean, when you look at it, Florida's another scary one. Probably not likely to happen. Toronto would have to win out. Boston would lose. And Florida would also not get any points. So there's that. But at the same time, Florida is a team that's, they've done it, right? And they believe now they've got some extra players in. They've grown their team a lot more from the previous year. So I think they're a team that, shouldn't be taken lightly. And I think they are a lot better than they were last year at this time.
Sure. Moving on to another topic. How about Jesper Boqvist and his ability to play well, come up from the a recall from the American Hockey League Providence Bruins, earn a spot on the fourth line, but play well in that role to earn some third line minutes. Where do we see him fitting moving forward with the next couple of games of the regular season and into the playoffs? I mean, is he the type of player that Jim Montgomery feels real comfortable at third line center, or is that going to be somebody else's? And we're just trying to see if we can find consistency right now with how versatile Boqvist can be.
Hear me out, Parker, before you jump in with your suggestion. I would like to see a third line of Trent Frederick, John Beecher, and Morgan Geekie. And I would like to see Boqvist center the fourth line with Maroon, simply because Boqvist has more experience, is as fast as Beecher, and can be solid defensively to help. I don't want to use the word cover up, but make up some of Maroon's deficiencies in getting back. Okay. If there's a in zone face off that has to happen, well, first of all, if Maroon's on the line, they're not getting a whole lot of defensive zone starts to begin with. But in the event, you could always send Beecher or somebody else take the draw and then make the quick switch to Boqvist. I don't know what you guys think.
I agree with you, Dom. And I think when we look at it down below, when you have Maroon, I think can play on that right side. I look at Lauko as another player who's been a little shaky as of late, but he has that sort of raw talent that I'm always seeing in your articles, right? Where he's got the skills to really sort of take it to the next level. It's just sometimes he sometimes he can't sort of find those lanes or whatnot, depending on the game. Another guy I could see sliding in there when we look at Boqvist, because at the end of the day, Boqvist is a guy who can sort of play with anybody, right? And we've seen it. He's a guy that has the skills and has that capability to play alongside whoever he needs to. So I think a guy like JVR is another one, right? Who's sort of been there, done that in his career. He's on the older side too. So he provides a little bit more of that calm to a line where if you want to stick him with Maroon, you can make a good old fashioned veterans line. You could throw Boqvist in there to give it a little bit of spring to the step almost. And I was also reading an article today about how we should be thanking the New Jersey Devils for Boqvist at the end of the day, because there was not only did we get our star second or first line center with Pavel Zacha in that Eric Holla trade, but I'm pretty sure it was the same year, or maybe it was another year after that, but with Boqvist coming over. So big thanks to the New Jersey Devils, I guess.
Yeah.
That trade's still playing so many dividends. And I liked Eric Holla too. I thought he was a hard worker, but I think that he was I don't know, a project of his environment. You know what I mean? I think that he was always kind of like that bottom line type of guy, but I like what Morgan Geekie's doing right now. you know.
Yeah, I think you've got to keep Frederick and Geeky together since they've been apart. They've both gone cold, but they just work so well together that I think you have to keep them as a duo.
And where does Danton Heinen fit on that?
I leave him where he is.
Yeah. Okay.
Leave him where he is. The line's working. Why break it up? Like, he can be the defensive conscience of that line. He'll still put up points because he's playing with David Pasternak. So I would leave it the way it is.
Yeah. And speaking of Danton Heinen, I just wanted to kind of transition this into nominated for the Bill Masterton Trophy, which is an award given annually to the player who best exemplifies the quality of perseverance, sportsmanship, and dedication to the game of hockey. What a choice for the Boston Bruins, you know. A lot of haters out there, probably not going to like this, but this is a guy that absolutely worked his bag off to be a part of this Boston Bruins team. He probably had several other options to go elsewhere, Europe, even another NHL team, but felt confident here that he was going to get a contract and so on. So, I commend him for his hard work, his determination, and willing to be patient with Jim Montgomery and that lineup and how to insert him in appropriately. And I thought that all parties did a great job, and he's definitely produced to a point where he's changed a lot of minds of people that really did not like him here before. And to be honest with you, this is the same player that was before. It's just we're seeing a different version now because he's been away so long. But I think his placement on this team has been really good, and and also probably a 7th player award winner in my opinion. We'll see what happens with that, but
I don't
know
think there's anybody on the team more deserving.
Yeah.
Of either award. It doesn't mean he's going to win it. There's guys around the league, right, that probably are more deserving. But I don't think there's anybody on the Bruins roster more deserving.
Thoughts, Walker?
No, I agree with all of that. I mean, you've seen his rise like the last couple months too, right? I mean, he's played I think 71 games now, and he's signed in October of this year, and he's sort of just taken off from there, right? He started on those low lines, and now he's playing on a second line pairing on a nearly first place team in the East. So when we look at it, I mean, there's not too much more to say there, right? He's just it's a good feel good story to sort of hang your hat on.
Yeah, I do definitely agree. Kevin Paul DuPont tweeted out or X'd out on the other day. Last season, when the Bruins had Patrice Bergeron and David Krejci both combined for 114 points in the regular season, with the departures of both potential Hall of Famers, Charlie Coyle and Pavel Zacha have 114 points this season. So here's my question for you both, because this seems to be one of the triggering aspects of an argument on Bruins Twitter. Do we need to address the center position immediately with their departures and what we've seen this year, or do we need to start looking for replacements for a player like Brad Marchand or anywhere else on the wings? Because for me, and I'll just say quickly, while I do believe in some prospects, I'm not totally sure about their NHL longevity in Boston.
First of all, I like to just say stats can be manipulated without context to make your point. Yeah, they had 114 points. Patrice Bergeron was a plus 35. David Krejci was a plus, I forget now.
23.
Right. Coyle's a -2.
He's back up to 0 as of
Or he's
today.
back up to 0. Like, we could play the stats game all night long, and Kevin Paul Dupont can manipulate it to make his argument. I can manipulate it to make my argument. That's just the way stats are. To answer your question, they're always looking for the future. Always. It's going to be hard to find another Patrice Bergeron. It's going to be hard to find another Brad Marchand. You're not going to find them in free agency. Players like that just don't come up in free agency. So they need to look elsewhere and develop them. Now, they've got a couple of years with Marchand. They'll work on it. Who's to say, and I'm just going to throw a name out there for the sake of throwing a name out there. Who's to say Trevor Kuntar couldn't be that guy?
Right.
Because Trevor Kuntar is what Brad Marchand was in junior. Okay? So it's not that the Bruins aren't consciously thinking about this. They need to find the path to find these guys, but they are aware that they need to replace these guys.
Parker, what are your thoughts, bud?
I mean, it's hard to say if that's a right now problem, right? When we look at a team that, to be honest, wasn't expected to do anything this year. Sure enough, they're first place in the league. So there's clearly something working, and I always bring it back to the culture argument, right? Of how is Boston doing this right now? And that's because they've got a culture in place. No need to rock the boat quite yet. Free agency comes, might be a completely different story, right? Maybe they lose a big piece and all of a sudden the team's shaken up, everything goes downhill, and they need a big shakeup. Maybe you make a move then. It's hard to say right now. I just think it's really hard to sort of say immediately that they need to make a big move to address it.
Yeah, because they've got a franchise goaltender in waiting in Jeremy Swayman. They've got a franchise defenseman in Charlie McAvoy. They've got a superstar forward and franchise forward in David Pastrnak. They have a potential number one center in waiting in Matthew Poitras. I like John Farinacci to someday become a number two centerman behind Poitras. But that's a few years down the road. But you still have Coyle. You still have Zacha for that time. So they're trying to find these pieces, but they're not going to suck. That core is in place.
Right. No, and that's what I kind of meant was like, I mean, they're not like elite centermen out there because those, obviously those cost money, but I think Coyle's value at $5 million is decent. And I also, Zacha's value is just, that's a mastermind by Don Sweeney right there. But it gives them flexibility to do things elsewhere as well. For me, the offseason, the free agency is real thin this year for me. Mm-hmm. That's just my opinion. But, I don't know. I kind of think that addressing the wing would be, what are they going to have? $21 million in available cap space?
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, there's so many options that you can go. You could, sign a bunch of your guys right now and so on. And I just don't see a centerman coming in here with the stuff that we have internally.
No. And now maybe let's not forget Zacha hasn't even entered his prime yet.
Right.
Right.
How crazy is that? 2015 draft pick.
Yeah, he hasn't even entered his prime yet. So, I'd be looking for a winger, preferably a left winger. And I still have faith in Fabian Lysell to be a number two right winger behind Pastrnak. And quite frankly, I move on from Jake DeBrusk and try and find a left winger behind Brad Marchand.
Yeah. A little update on Fabian Lysell. No injury update, but I will say that Mark Diver has been reporting several times that he's been in a sling. He did take the team photo the other day, but immediately went right back into the sling. So no defined injury update as of right now, but that's where we are. And it sucks because that's 2 years in a row late in the year that he's got knocked out. So, but I mean, there's a good future for him this year. I think this off season, let him get healthy, let him work out, hopefully stay in Boston like we talked about a couple episodes. Don't go back home. Stay in Boston, stay with the team, and then really try to like force yourself into the Bruins lineup next year. I think that this is a big off season for him. It's put the big boy pants on and let's freaking go, because and like Ryan Mujanel said in one of our videos, time's running out on some of these players. It's you got to either put up or shut up. So, and I agree with that. I like the approach.
No Bruins Academy or whatever the fuck it was following him around.
Yeah, right.
Go. You know what? Take a page out of Matthew Poitras' off-season workout like he did last year and go do that and make an impact next year.
Absolutely. And I can't. I'm more on board with moving DeBrusk now. I don't know if he's going to be that type of impact player in these playoffs. I just haven't seen any consistency. There was a time when he was getting good and then just kind of tailed off. His game's still there, his speed's still there, and so on. But when it comes down to the nitty gritty of the postseason, you got to put the puck back in the net. That's what ultimately helps you win games.
He does that in the playoffs.
Well, hopefully they did.
Even when he has a bad regular season, he shows up in the playoffs.
I mean, part of the problem, right, is he's just so streaky, and at the end of the day, he's either going to hit his stride in the playoffs or he isn't, and that's what we've seen. I think it was the past 5 games or 7 games, he's maybe an assist, and then the 10 games before that, he was like 13 points or 15 points, and it's just he hits it when he hits his stride and he finds what he's trying to do. He's lights out, and to be honest, he fits exactly where the Bruins need him to. It's just that doesn't happen as often as they'd like to. He's not Pasternak where, you count on him for the big goal. It's, are you hot right now? If you're hot, then we're going to count on you. But if you're not, then I guess we're down the wayside at this point.
Okay, let me ask you guys this, because Brad Marchand has gone cold too. And, I guess the thinking was DeBrusk going cold made Marchand cold. No, they went cold at the same time, and they're still cold. And now Frederick has gone cold because Geeky's up playing with Marchand, and it's like messed everything up. Put Geeky back with Frederick. Let them get their game back. Put DeBrusk back with Marchand. Let them get their game back. Because obviously they're not working out a bit apart. They're just bringing everybody else down.
That's true.
What are your thoughts on that?
For sure, and that's what they did today, actually, in I think the morning skate or whatever the current lines are, is that they have Marchand, Coyle, and DeBrusk together on that top pair. And I think when you look at it, as you said, Dom, just anything to get that spark going as best they can. And you put someone with the speed of DeBrusk on that right side with Marchand. We've seen it work before back in, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, but they said, you know what, we're going to try something different. That was I think that might have been actually the first time that top line of Bergeron, Marchand, and Pasternak didn't go together. And sure enough, I believe it was, I can't remember who scored the hat trick, but I remember there was that big hat trick, and I was like, okay, this might just work.
Yeah.
Transition into one of our last topics I do want to talk about is Boston Bruins prospect Reed Dick. Goaltending prospect that has been just amazing this season. 2 injuries, one to start the year, one in the middle of the year, came back healthy, and just from that point, the middle of the season, came right into the playoffs, looking like a guy that's on a mission to do something really good for himself. Obviously, his upside, and in the Swift Current Broncos organization, who hasn't been this far, I don't believe, since 2018 when they won it all. But Reed is 4-0. He has a 2.30 goals against average, a .927 save percentage, a shutout in game 1 in the sweep against the Lethbridge Hurricanes. Unreal. And if anybody, I also got to shout out Connor Geeky, Morgan's brother. This guy has been a buzzsaw out there, real creative, can put the puck in the net. But he's also the Central Division MVP, and that's impressive when you get an accolade like that. And also, I mean, just my time watching this year, and because I follow Reed a lot, I was really impressive with the defenseman Owen Pickering. That guy
yeah.
Pickering's so damn good,
top notch defenseman.
So good.
That Swift Current team is built to win. Simple as that. From the net out, they're built to win. They went out and acquired Geeky in a trade. I don't know how much you get to watch them, Parker. I know you watch them a lot, Reed. The post-game celebrations between Dick and Geeky, it's like watching the Swayman Allmark hug, except they don't hug. They do something differently. I'll let you guys look it up for yourselves if you want to know, but it's every game after a win. Dick's numbers aren't up there with some of the other goalies in the playoffs right now. But I tell you what, he's facing more shots, and he's doing what the team needs him to do, and that's keep him in games. And that's all you want your goaltender to do. I said it months ago that he is Swift Current's most valuable player. Has been, despite the time he missed, because you compare their record with him and without him, it's astronomical. It's like night and day. And then him and Dick and Geeky were named co-winners of most valuable players. So, yeah, he means a lot to them. I expect that the minute they're eliminated, he signs his entry-level contract. He's 20, right, Mark?
Yes, this is his 20 year.
So my guess is that his contract will start for next season, and then he'll sign an ATO to be able to go to Providence. He's not going to play in any games. Don't get me wrong. He's not getting thrown in the playoffs ahead of Bussy or DiPietro. But to be part of a team, but I'm not expecting Swift Current to get knocked out. They could win the championship. They're not winning the Memorial Cup.
Right.
There's no way. There's 2 juggernauts in the OHL with Saginaw and London. They're not beating them.
And if you want to watch Reed, Dick, and the Swift Current Broncos, please, I think it's $9.99. Go to watch or chl.ca or .tv.
chltv.ca.
Yeah. And check it out. It's really cool. That actually starts tonight. The second round for the Swift Current Broncos starts tonight against the Moose Jaw Warriors.
Yeah, 9 p.m. Eastern time.
That's right. So, all right, let's hit our commercial break. Let's hear from BB Lux, and we'll get those these viewer questions out there. So start typing in some questions, and we'll answer them for the remainder of the program. So let's hear from our show sponsor, and we'll be right back with those listener questions.
If you're looking for a safe and reliable ride to the airport or planning a trip to Boston for a sporting event for groups of up to 15 people, we highly recommend the BB Lux Transportation Company. This 5-star family-run business is the #1 private car service of the UMass and Hearst parent group and is dedicated to making sure you have the best traveling experience for any occasion, whether your trip is for business or pleasure. Please call BB Lux today at 978-701-1473 to schedule your ride to and from anywhere in the greater Boston area. You can also send this transportation company an email at bbluxforless@gmail.com. Please give them a follow on Facebook by searching BB Lux and tell them Black and Gold Productions sent you.
All right, back talking bees, and let's get some questions from the viewers in the chat. Andrew, thank you, Andrew. Andrew's coming in with this. Not a playoff related question, but more of a college free agents. Anyone on your list that you think Sweeney and company might be in on that you have heard? I haven't heard anybody.
I haven't heard anybody specifically, but Ryan Kerwin was one. I know they had interest in him. They even invited him to development camp last summer, but he entered the transfer portal today, so it looks like he's returning back to school for next year because he's looking for a transfer. So that's the one that I know that they had interest in.
Yeah, and with the contracts, what, 49 of 50 right now?
Doesn't matter. They can sign up for next. No, it's a contract for next year.
Okay, all right. But I think I'm not sure if Andrew was asking if they're looking at anybody right now, or is it still the same?
Still the same. I mean, they sign him. They sign him now, but the contract takes effect next year. Okay. You can sign a guy. You can sign a guy to an ATO this year. Yeah. That's an AHL contract. Has nothing to do with the NHL.
I got you. All right, boys from the pod, Snipe and Sully. These guys are always on every week. One of my favorite programs, and I've been addicted to these guys for months. But they said, looking ahead to the offseason, the Bruins don't have a draft pick through the first 3 rounds. Who do you think is a potential trade candidate who could get Boston back into that range? Interesting question. Parker, go for it.
Yeah. I just, it's hard to think that they'd even, they're in a transition year. They're in a transition year this year, despite being basically first in the East. And then the question becomes, are they going to try and just keep it going, right? And I think if it's more of a managerial decision to see if they want to go for it for next year. And I think when we look at the team and sort of how they're built, they want to send one more final year. I think next year is that year where they might try and make a move. We've seen it with Allmark, who was held at this year's deadline. Whether they try and move him, that's still up in the air. Another guy is DeBrusk, whether they try and bring him back. I just don't know if now is the time for them to sort of try and go into that rebuild after, as a transition year team, whether this was the year for them to sort of try and go into that rebuild. I don't know if that's sort of where they're going to try and head to, but at the end of the day, of course, that'll be up to them. And it's just hard to tell.
Yeah. Other than Allmark, they got nobody to trade unless you're talking about moving McAvoy or Pastrnak. Nobody is going to get him into the second round. You might be able to do a sign and trade with Jake DeBrusk and pull in the second round pick. But Other than that, nobody.
And that's also really frowned upon, right? When you pick up
Yeah.
a guy, you sign him right away, and then you get rid of him, right? So
Yeah.
I just think that when we look at it that way, it's really hard to justify, trying to make a big move, whether you are a contender or not, to try and make a move to try and get someone of that caliber. When I think when we look at it, especially with sort of who's coming up in the system, I don't know if they need to make a move right now, but at the end of the day, of course, that's still to be determined.
Yeah, let's not forget they just signed Bavaro out of the NCAA, who is an early third round type defenseman. They just signed Jackson Nelson, who is probably a mid to late third talent. And they signed the goaltender Bishel to an AHL contract, who's a late round type projects, is similar to Reed Dick, who we just talked about. So it's not that they haven't made up the lack of picks. They're just not getting that high end first rounder. And nothing that they have short of moving Pasternak or McAvoy or Allmark or possibly Lindholm is getting you that first round pick. And I'd argue that Lindholm and Allmark get you a late first round pick, not an early first round pick.
Pod Snipe Sally, these guys are awesome. There's one for you, Dom. If you want to trade Jackson Nelson to the Minnesota Wild, we'll have that deal.
Okay. What do you do? Well, yeah.
Yeah, one of the hosts, Dan Bradley, really great guy, and the other host is Joel. Two fantastic people, but Dan was the one I reached out to about that Jackson guy, and he gave me a really nice write out that I wanted to use last week, but unfortunately we didn't have a show because of some family issues. But I want to thank Dan personally for sending that over to me. I really appreciate that, bud. Jason comes in with an interesting one here. Do you think the defense is set for next year, or do they try to bring in someone either through UFA or trade?
UFA maybe, trade no. I don't see this team selling assets that they lack to bring somebody in. If they can find what they need through UFA, they'll do it. Now, unless you're talking about them not wanting to re-sign Jake DeBrusk and making him part of the trade, yeah, I can see a trade. But they're not going to give up assets to go get an asset that they can get through free agency.
Yeah, and I'd agree with that too. It's just really hard to justify, right? Whether you're a contender or a rebuilder, trying to trade away some of your key assets on your team, it just doesn't make a ton of sense, especially as a team that's already shown, that they're capable of making a run in the playoffs. Maybe not a run in the playoffs, but getting to that spot where they can say, we're a nearly first place team. You got to bet on us at some point. And I think coming to this year's offseason, that's going to be what's in the back of the Bruins fans' minds, Bruins GMs, whoever it might be, managerial. But at the end of the day, you're a team that's nearly come first place in the entire league on a transition year. You're going to eventually have to pick up some assets to sort of bring it in. I think, as you said, Dom, UFA is really the only option they have. They can trade Allmark, but they're probably not going to get the return they're hoping for. But I guess at the end of the day, time will tell here.
Hey, and just a reminder to send us some questions in the live chat, and we'll try to do our best to answer them. But to fill some space right now, I did want to touch on Mason Lohrei being sent down to the American Hockey League Providence Bruins. He left practice early this afternoon and headed down to the AMP down in Providence, Rhode Island, because the Utica Comets are in town tonight. And I'm going to be watching that game later on. Plus, I'm going to be watching Reed Dick and the Swift Current Broncos later on. Real busy day here for the for me and the hockey watching. But Some folks had a bit of a problem with this move, and I don't understand why, but I did want to ask you guys, particularly Dom, about how important it is for a player like Mason at his age and at his developmental level right now. It is to keep him playing and in game shape. I don't think it does him a justice at all to sit and watch the game. What are your thoughts on that? And then, and Parker, could you follow?
Mason Lohrei was not in my starting 6 playoff lineup. And we know Forbert was skating today. If Forbert is good to go, Lohrei wouldn't even be my first guy in. That said, he's got to be playing in the event that they do need him. I mean, let's say they were going to get to the finals. That's 4 rounds. And if you need him in the final series because of injuries, and he's been sitting on the 9th floor that whole time, what good is he to you? If Jeremy Swayman was no good to you for sitting for 6 games, what good is Mason Lohrei going to be to you sitting for 20 games? Get him in Providence. Providence needs him. Let him play the big minutes there in a playoff atmosphere in the event that he's needed in Boston. And that's my take. And I don't know how anybody can see it any other way. But here will come Parker and give me another way that'll make sense.
Oh no, I got nothing on you, Dom, for this one. But as you said, it's hard to disagree with it. And as much as I try and find fault, it's a foolproof, right? It's just you can't. It's hard to disagree with it at the end of the day because he's not playing in Boston. He's not getting better. He's not being into his prime. And even if when you look at it, right, he's a young player, lots of room to grow. But at the end of the day, if you're sitting on the 9th floor, you aren't playing, you aren't getting the reps in that you're looking for. And much more importantly, they got a big run coming up. And if they are going to need him at any point, as you said, Dom, it's going to be he might become a crucial player for the Bruins. If you're haven't played a game in, a month or 2 months, you're probably not going to be ready to go. And I think when we look at it that way, it's a no-brainer to send him down to Providence.
Yeah, and per Mark Diver on his lineup share that he does every game, great follow. He has Lohrei playing with Ian Mitchell on the top pairing. I mean, that's a given right there.
That's where he should be. Like,
exactly.
I know there's a lot of people that think that Mason Lohrei is the answer to the Bruins' power play woes right now, but he's not. One day he might be, but he's not the answer for it today. Their issues run a lot deeper than just one defenseman.
And that's one of the things that I kind of was talking with a bunch of people online this afternoon was they think that Mason's better than Shattenkirk and Wotherspoon and all this stuff. And well, that might be a fair argument, but also there's a thing about experience that the coaching staff believes in some of these players that have been through all of these aspects of playoffs and being Stanley Cup winners. So I think that is going to take a little more precedence over a guy that's only been in the league for a year and
not even a full year.
Right. Up and down and so on. And I'm not knocking Mason for his talent or what he's brought to the table this year. What he's done has been really good, and it gives you really good vibes of how his future is going to pan out. Dom, I've heard you several times saying, I don't want Noah Hannafin. We already have that type of player here. He's going to arrive in a year or two. Be patient. 3. Okay.
I said many times in 3 years, he'll be a better player than Noah Hannafin.
Right.
But I stick my neck out by saying things like that. But I turn around and I admit he's not that right now. He's not the answer right now. Give him time.
Exactly. Beth in the house, she asks a very interesting question. Wouldn't Forbert be in the same situation as Lowry since Forbert hasn't played in a long time? But
I'd argue that it isn't really, considering Forbert's coming off of injury, right? So when we look at it that way, it's a lot tougher for Lowry, who is healthy, who's just been sitting out for a while, where Forbert is sort of getting back into the stretch of things. In the overall sense, I mean, you could say yes, they are coming back from a long absence, but Lowry is a guy who is young. He has the ability to develop down in Providence, where a guy like Forbert is just trying and get the reps in before they can more or less use him in the playoffs, right? And he's been there. He's done that. He knows what it's going to take. So for a guy like Forbert, who's really looking to get back into the playoffs, that might be, if Boston can get a guy like Forbert back, who's, he's been there, he's done it. He's a guy that you can rely upon in the playoffs. It's a little bit different where you can send a guy back down to Providence and then call him back up.
right. And an NHLer right now is not going down to Providence. A lot of people are saying, why is he going down? Send Grizzlick. Or, why is he? It doesn't happen like that. Again, send us some questions to answer. This is your time. The floor is yours. To the people in the live chat. Let me just scroll up real quick. Andrew Peterkin says, super excited about Lowry's future, but he simply isn't defensively strong enough at this stage of his freshman year. Totally agree on that. Pod Snipe Sully, I want to get to this one. If the Providence Bruins end up playing the Hershey Bears in the AHL playoffs, can Providence pull up the upset on the Bears headed back-to-back Calder Cups? I don't think so.
Oh,
go ahead, Tom.
I don't know. Providence defense, even with the addition of Lowry today, is hurting with injuries. They got Bavaro in there, who's played 2 games. Yeah. Regula's out for probably the season. I don't know. Their back end looks like a mess. Lysell sounds like he's done for the season. If Providence were to beat them, I would have to think of a stronger word than upset, and I'm not sure what that word would be, because
Cinderella story.
Yeah, Cinderella story.
Mine would be 2 words: Holy shit.
Yeah, because honestly, Mark, can you see Providence even winning a game?
I don't know. I got to be honest, as a person as a Bruins fan, Providence fan, and one that covers the team, I just think that the Hershey Bears are an absolute wagon this year. Yeah, and they were last year as well. And I don't know, they have it all the way through. And what a tremendous job from the Washington Capitals down to the Hershey Bears, the historic Hershey Bears, the former Boston Bruins affiliate of a long time ago. What a long storied franchise. And I got to tell you, man, I really love Pennsylvania fans. They go to hockey games.
Mm-hmm.
They fill the barns. I mean, maybe not so much Wilkes-Barre, Scranton. I know they do have their times when their barn looks big. Definitely not on a Wednesday night, but on a Wednesday night in Hershey and a Wednesday night in like Lehigh Valley, those barns are really, really full. So kudos to the good Pennsylvania fans out there.
I have to, while we're waiting for a question, can I quickly bring up Don's Lochmellis?
Yeah, go for
Mark? It. Okay, so those that don't know, he got knocked out of the NCAA tournament, week and a half ago? 2 weeks ago now, whatever it was. But he's been in Latvia, Finland, Austria, and he's with the Latvian national team. about to make the roster for the 2024 IHF Men's World Hockey Championship. So he's played in 4 exhibition games now for them, 2 against Austria, 2 against Finland. They beat Austria 2 times, lost in a shootout 3-2 to Finland, and lost in regulation 3-2 to Finland. So they're going to have a pretty good team, and he's going to play a big role on that team.
Yeah, I always love watching those tournaments too, because
they're the best.
There's just so much hockey in such a condensed amount of time, and it's like you start the day and they're on, you end the day and they're on, and it's always just a great day of hockey. And that starts, I believe, May 5th, I believe, is when it starts.
10th to the 26th.
10th, yeah. So,
and maybe you know, Parker, but are they not playing on the new hybrid ice surface this year? So just a bit smaller than the international, but still bigger than the NHL. I remember reading that, but I can't remember if it was for this tournament or another one.
I think it was this one. They always jump though, because like normally in like the Olympic years, they like to try and keep it to the international ice.
Yeah.
And then it just depends on the years. Olympics are in 26, so I think they'd be sticking with the NHL, but it might be the hybrid one too.
Okay.
I know I read something somewhere that the IIHF wants to go to a 200 by 85 or was it 200 by 90 and keep it very similar to what is happening over here in North America, to kind of seamlessly make that adjustment from European hockey to North American hockey a little bit easier. But with today's freaking athletes, those adjustments don't take long.
No,
obviously it's taken Fabian Lysell maybe a little longer, but other athletes not so long. So I want to get to this one. Beth wanted to know, will we see Maroon on the ice before the start of the playoffs, and would he be effective during the playoffs coming off back surgery? Beth, as of right now, but check in with the report tomorrow before the game. But all things are heading towards he's making his debut in Pittsburgh tomorrow at 8 p.m. So, like I said, find out tomorrow. Check out the lineup. But I think he gets in for at least a game or two, possibly the next 3 that are in the regular season before the postseason. Just kind of get him tuned up from there, and obviously we'll see how his placement pans out in the postseason, because is he a player? If we play we won't play the Tampa Bay Lightning because I already locked that in. But what team would he be most? I can't even say my words. Sorry.
To answer the part about will he be effective, I think he will, just for the simple fact that having him in the lineup makes everybody else play bigger. And that's where his effectiveness comes in, to get them to amp up and play playoff style hockey. And I think that's the reason he's there. And I see Parker's nodding, so he's agreeing with me, right?
We're 2 for 2, Dom. We're on fire.
2 for 2. Holy shit, Batman.
But Mark, so also just to answer the question that I think you were going to ask there was, which team would he be most effective against? And I think there's no better team than the Toronto Maple Leafs to have a physical front, because we've seen it time and time again. When the Leafs are forced to play physical, the team falls apart. And you look to, they have some more grinder type players this year, but still Boston, whenever they play the Leafs, it just seems to be a little bit more physical, and the Leafs fall for the trap every single time. So when we're looking at it, who's going to have problems playing the physical game, and what does Maroon provide as that physical side? It's got to be the Toronto Maple Leafs.
And that forces Reeves into the lineup. And anytime you force Reeves onto the ice for more than 3 minutes a game, that's a bonus to you.
Right. And that's kind of where I was trying to go with that before I couldn't get my words out, was, a lot of when we got Maroon, regardless of how he was injured and so on in the back surgery, I still would have not played him every game of the season when he got acquired. I would put him in spot starts.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Just to get him adequated and so on. But, obviously if you're playing a team like Toronto, yeah, I would love to see it. But you're also, I don't know. It all depends on how you really did during the regular season as well in the matchup. So that's for me anyway. Crazy Cat. That's interesting. Crazy Cat says, are we keeping 2 $6 million goalies?
Why not?
We have one. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It seems right now we're going to keep them. Absolutely. We can't do anything with them right now, but
I think they're asking for next year because Swayman isn't $6 million this year. But my answer to that is why not? You've got $21 million in cap space. You're not going to use it. You're not going to use it all. So why not have the best goaltending duo in the NHL for another season? And beyond that, you go beyond next year when it's expected to jump another $4 to $4.5 million. Then 2 $6 million goalies becomes a bargain.
Yeah, it doesn't take long for that to be a bargain at all.
No, you talk Arizona moving to Salt Lake City. That's a jump in the cap. Right. That's a huge jump in the cap.
Go ahead, Parker.
Dom, I think with the last time I was on here, we're talking about this exact same thing about whether the Bruins were going to keep it. So it was right after the trade deadline, right? And it was the big story of Allmark just right up the deadline not getting traded, right? And then the question became, why didn't they do it? And one of the big things was, the whole goal of it was to get Swayman at a cheaper deal. At the end of the day, he's a franchise goalie, right? And it's hard to say anything other than that for Swayman. But if you look at it, and he's a tandem starter, he's not that like standalone franchise starter. He's going to take a little bit of a pay cut because he's not a starter role. So I think when we look at it that way, it makes sense to keep Allmark at least past Swayman's contract extension, and then from there, maybe the question becomes, what's next?
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense now. I mean, I'm on the fence about this whole situation when it comes to goaltending. I would, if Allmark needs to be moved this offseason, I understand it. But I'm also totally on board if he sticks around for his final year. Because it puts you in a really good position if the goal isn't accomplished this year. And the goal to start every season was a Stanley Cup, and they're 3 games away from starting the postseason. Do I believe that they'll get a cup this year? I don't know. I mean, anything could happen. I'm kind of riding the gravy train this year has been really nice and everything. But if they don't get it, the increased salary cap next season and the position of you having 2 1A goaltenders already, then you can build a championship team next year, literally. Or if you need to trade because the free agency is thin and so on, you have so many things that you can do to really make a cup team this year or next year. Sorry. Sharon Dietz. I love this. I love this woman. Will the Bruins ever score on the power play? God, this reminds me of 2011, and we just acquired Thomas Caberlet from the Toronto. No, it wasn't from the Toronto. Was it Toronto?
Yeah, it was from Toronto. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. And we get him to be the power play specialist, and I don't even think he got a power play goal.
I think just for these last 3 games, just for the hell of it, throw Kevin Shattenkirk in the bumper position. It works.
I mean,
you're in London, so you know, if you go to the Knights games, you get to see it all the time. Dale Hunter is a big fan of throwing defensemen into the bumper position. He's done it this year with Radek Bonk. Not Radek.
Wow.
Bonk, the Flyers draft pick.
Oliver Bonk.
Oliver Bonk,
Oliver.
Radek Bonk's grandson.
Oh, grandson. Wow.
Grandson. He did it with Evan Bouchard back in the day, put them in the bumper position, and it just works. Kevin Shattenkirk is that kind of defenseman where it actually could work.
For sure. And I think the other thing we should talk about is Oliver Bonk's also very good at scoring goals into his own net. Sorry. That's the Canada fan talking. Sorry, I got it out.
I love that. What was it?
Still,
what was it?
Still fuming.
What was it?
What was it?
Game 3 against Flint, didn't he put 2 into his own net?
Did he really? I was talking about the juniors game.
Oh, he did it. He did it in the playoffs in game 2 or 3 against Flint in the last round. He put 2 in his own net.
Oh.
Right. Let's see. Pod Snipe Sally, they say Bruins will score multiple power play goals against Ottawa in the season finale. You heard it here. Tune it up. You place a bet on that, Dan.
Dan, my biggest fear, and I've seen this from the Ottawa Senators too many times as a Bruins fan, the Bruins have something to gain by beating them, and they end up throwing a stinker against Ottawa in the last game of the year, and Ottawa just knocks them out of whatever they're trying to do, whether it's get into a playoff spot or win first place or whatever. That's my biggest fear with the last game being against Ottawa.
Here's one from our friend Kevin, who changed his name for some unknown reason. Will Brad stick for the playoffs? Interesting question, because Braz is out with an upper body injury. I'm thinking it's either elbow or wrist related. Would love to have a guy like that back in the lineup, but I don't know what's going to happen with that. I guess it's a good thing that he's skating, but he's not like doing a lot of hand work and so on. And he's not completely ruled out. So, I mean, it could be a potential that he could come back, but I'm not a medical guy, so I don't exactly know where we're at with that. Would love to have his big body in front of the opposing net, that's for sure, in an upcoming postseason. Like we've seen a lot this season with him being recalled or signed and brought up to the NHL for his first NHL action.
Kevin's been here this whole time, and that's the first I've heard from him.
No. He originally came on with Kevin, his name, and then I think he had to change. I think Facebook might have been screwing up.
Oh.
What else have we got? Andrew says, okay, boys, great content as always. My work day is over. Go Bees. Nice, thanks. Swedish Chef. I like that. We need Braz back. Park his ass in front of the net. The playoffs, garbage goals equals playoff wins. I like that. I'm trying to see. You know what we do need? If anybody is here that wants to be a producer and do all of this for us, let me know.
Not me. I'm computer illiterate.
Makes 2 of us.
Yes. Everybody that's watching on YouTube, please hit the like button and subscribe too, by the way. We would certainly appreciate that. We're trying to grow this YouTube channel. We're going to be doing these live streams every episode. There's a lot of people like Sharon Dietz out there that asked us to do live streams more often. So why not take advantage of catering to people like Sharon, but also we can do the audio podcast for the Apple Podcast and Spotify and so on, and also cater to the viewers and so on. Freddie Palmer, what scares me is not enough physical play with this team going into the playoffs. Yeah, we talked about that a little while ago, Fred. I think that it's getting better It has been getting better, especially since Jim Montgomery put the hammer down, bag skated them a bit, and I think they responded pretty well. I think that they finished their checks a little bit more. They're more engaged. Is it perfect? I don't think so, but at least they're offering some kind of pulse that they want to be competitive and they want to, be able to at least stay in the first round and possibly get into the second round and go further. But it remains to be seen. That switch between the regular season and the off season has not been flipped yet, so we really don't know what exact team we're going to see. Parker, what do you think? Let's get you involved. I'm sorry if I'm shutting you out.
No, you're good. I think just the addition of Maroon too, we sort of talked about it already, but just sort of that culture that he provides, right? It's night and day difference. In my opinion, it's going to be, we'll see it in tomorrow's game, likely against the Penguins, but they're a team that it's going to be a playoff atmosphere for them. They're at this point practically win or go home, so they're going to put their best foot forward. And I think when we look at it, Boston has to match it. And there's no one I'd rather see in a debut than Patrick Maroon to sort of show what the Bruins are going to be made out of in this playoff. Sort of start that culture trend for the playoffs to get everyone in that mindset. And I think tomorrow's game is really going to be representative of what we're going to see in the playoffs for Boston.
Don's been known to whack people. I love it. It's bad.
That is Kevin. I'm surprised he hasn't asked me about Nick Ritchie yet.
Oh. Ray Lang comes in saying, looking at the team we have now and what cap space we will get and the prospects coming up, do we think we will have a powerhouse in a few years? If so, what does it look like? I don't know about a powerhouse, but I think, I don't know. Don Sweeney and the scouting staff seem to have a niche for finding those under the radar type of players that come in. They adjust to the culture. They're happy to be in Boston, happy to be playing for an original six. I don't know.
I think, like I said earlier, they have a franchise goaltender, a franchise defenseman. They've got another defenseman who, on a lot of teams, would be a number one defenseman. They have a superstar forward, franchise forward in David Pastrnak. There's young guys coming. Will they be a powerhouse? I don't know. Depends on your definition of a powerhouse. But they will be competitive. And, you look at the teams that have won the Cup since 2011. LA had to go through a rebuild. Chicago had to go through a rebuild. Who else? Like St. Louis is now going to go through a rebuild. Washington is soon entering a rebuild. And the Bruins have remained competitive all along. They just know how to do it and how to do it right. Which I'll let Parker bring it up. We talked about it earlier, some news regarding Don Sweeney. The man just doesn't get enough credit. And so, Parker, take it away.
Sure. So, always exciting news when there's a little bit of international times Boston Bruins action. And it was just announced today that Don Sweeney will be leading the GM for Canada at the Four Nations Cup, as well as the assistant GM for the Canadian Olympic team in 2026. So big deal for him. Congrats. And well-deserved too. We've seen with what he can do, what he's done with the Boston Bruins, and he's basically turned a transition year team into a more or less first place contender. So, hats off to him, super well-deserved, and certainly gets his fair share of flack. But at the end of the day, he gives results. So it's hard to go against him.
Sorry, I had a cough there. Yeah. Geez.
Oh, wait. I got to answer Kevin's question. Hold on. I have to get into uniform.
Oh Jesus! Now I'm scared.
Okay, Nick Ritchie. I was flying back from Germany this morning. You probably saw my video on Twitter racing back from the Toronto airport, right? To get back for the podcast. And I thought I was at the airport in Toronto.